Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with friends, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thank you. Not too long ago, I did a video on this knife by Schrade. It's a copy of a folding dirk, which would have been popular in the United States back from around 1830 all the way up through the Civil War and then some. Especially among people like riverboat gamblers, prostitutes, things of that nature, or anybody who just needed a knife for protection, a nice folding knife for protection. And during that video, I mentioned that they also had a version known as a folding Bowie. I did not have one at the time, and I still don't have an actual one, but like this one, I do have a replica now of a folding Bowie. It is also made by Schrade. Well, it's made by Hammer Brand, which is owned by Schrade. And this was made about 20 or 30 years ago, about the same time that these knives came out. And so I thought I would take a look at that one now. And so here it is, the Folding Bowie by Hammer Brand. And this is a pretty good copy of what you would have seen back in the 1830s through 1850s when it came to a folding Bowie. This particular one has the half horse, half alligator pommel on it, which was very popular back in the day. It was something that commemorated the Kentucky volunteers who went off to fight in the War of 1812 during the Battle of New Orleans. They were known as, well, they fought like they were half horse, half alligator. That's where the term came from. And while it looks like it's mostly a horse, if you notice that back tail does not look anything like a horse's tail, and those back legs would be a very deformed horse. So this is the alligator end, and this is the horse end of the knife. And if you notice that pommel, it's actually the same pommel on both sides. So if we were to flip it this way, suddenly it is upside down. So one side it appears upside down, the other side it's right side up. So depending on how you want to do it. This would be the front side of the knife. That's where you see the Hammer Brand there. So on the front side, when the knife is closed up, the half horse, half alligator is upside down. No big deal. If you notice, this is stag. It's a really nice stag actually for what you're paying for it. I mean, these knives were made by Taylor Cutlery or Taylor Brand. So these were made after Schrade went bankrupt in the United States. Taylor bought it and moved production to China, and these knives were indeed made in China. However, nowhere on this knife does it say made in China. So that's something to look out for when you're seeing these. People could easily say that they are made in the United States, but it also nowhere does it say made in USA. So unless somebody were to go and start etching things, you'll just have to take my word for it that these were made in China. They were made about 20-30 years ago, soon after Taylor took over Schrade Cutlery. Build quality is not bad at all. You can see there is a slight gap right there. You can actually feel it as you transition from bolster to stag, and you can also catch your thumbs in these areas too. So it's not perfect, but it's not bad either. Notice the threading on both bolsters, or in this case, what, 1, 2, 3 triple ring, double ringed bolsters with some nice casting work going on. This is exactly the way they would have looked back in the 1830s, 1850s and such. The parts were actually casted out of nickel silver, and then they would have been given a coating of gold or silver or something like that also. But yeah, the parts were cast even back then. Would they have been cast a little bit better? Well, probably, I'm not sure. This is a copy of the casting. As I mentioned, these were made out of, these have stag handles. Back in the 1830s or so, 1840s, this would have been the low-end material used on these folding buoys. Higher-end material would have probably been ivory or pearl. The stag, I guess, wouldn't be necessarily the low end. It would have been the lowest end of the high end materials. Beyond that, you would also find some with like ebony wood or something like that for the handle. So I guess you would say that the stag would have been in the middle of the road for finishing materials on these. Now, if we open it up, you notice it has a massive Bowie blade. You know, a nice clip blade. And if you notice, it's got some interesting swedge going on there. You got the false swedge up here, and then the blade is also lightened a little bit here. Notice how that lightens here, but further back you have a fuller spine, so the blade loses a little weight as it drops in. And you've got some really interesting cuts on it, and that is also something that you would have seen on the original folding Bowie. So they did a really good job of copying how the blade is done. Got a nice big nail nick there, but that nail nick is actually not necessary at all, and I would have preferred if the knife did not have the nail nick, because as you can see, there's plenty of blade to grab onto when you're opening this, and the blade is not under extreme amount of tension, so it's pretty easy to open too. Matter of fact, you could grab this blade and flick it open. I'm not going to try and do it on film because it'll end up in my foot probably, but once open though, it has a very good strong lock, no blade wobble in it whatsoever, and you have to really press down on that back lock to close this blade up. All in all, just a really well-made knife. Pins are flush here, flush here. You can feel them a little bit in the grooves there. As you can see, the stag is not perfectly matched, but it is pretty well matched. This could have been a little more brown back here maybe, but all in all, not a bad looking knife for what it is. A replica of a knife that would have been popular, well, 170 years ago, something like that. I don't know, pretty long time ago. Any case, let's talk size a little bit. We're talking about something that comes in at right at about 6 1/4 inches long closed with a 5-inch blade. So this thing, yeah, well, the blade is 4 3/4 inches or so. So we're talking about something that is 11 inches long when it is fully deployed. Now let's compare that to the folding dirk, which was 5 inches long with a 4 1/4 inch blade. You see that? We're talking about some major reach on there. If we just go with the blades, blade length isn't too bad, I guess. We just go over that. About a 1/2 inch longer on the blade, but look at how massive that clip point blade is compared to that slender spear point blade. This knife was obviously designed for one purpose, and that was a thrusting knife. That's why they were often called stabbers. Whereas this, you could actually go out and butcher animals with it. This was definitely more of a fighting knife. This is something that you could take hunting with you or whatever. So you're going to be able to slash with it. You're going to be able to cut with it. You're going to be able to beat the crap out of it and also stab people with it. So this was a more utilitarian knife that was definitely more useful than the small folding dirk, which was really something that was, you know, obviously you could slash with it, but was really designed specifically for stabbing. This one, a universal knife fighter's kind of knife, and much bigger and much heavier. You could actually hit somebody with this and probably kill them because of just how heavy the pommel on this is compared to the weight of the pommel on this knife. So this brute of a knife was really designed for self-defense in mind, and self-defense back in the you know, the Old West or even the pre-Old West. And you can see why it would have been a very popular knife for the cities and other places where you wanted to easily conceal a knife, because this could definitely be dropped into a boot, most likely with the guard facing upward, so you could grab the guard and pull it out. If you had the guard down, it might be snagging on all sorts of stuff. I could also see this being slipped into the pocket with the guard being outside the pocket and grabbing the outside. So the only thing that you would see would be something similar to this, as it would be resting in a pocket, and then you could just pull it right out by the guard and then deploy the blade. So yeah, definitely a nice big folding hunter, big fighting knife, and definitely something to be reckoned with in a knife fight, especially back in the day. All right, this is about the 8th or 9th take on this portion of the video. Why would anyone want to buy a replica of this knife? Because that's what this is. This is a replica of a knife that was made about 150 to 180 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. These were basically made from about 1830 to about 1870 or so. They really fell out of favor after the Civil War. Lighter, better knives were coming out, and these were kind of old-fashioned by then. However, they remained in use probably into the mid-1880s, because folks who had fought in the Civil War would have had these kind of knives, and they would have kept them, and they would have used them after the war was over. So like Civil War veterans from both sides, the Confederate and the Union, would have been carrying these knives as they went west, and they would have been using them for cutting up everything from buffalo to anything else that they needed to eat. You could see these in the Indian fights and stuff like that. So Native Americans could also end up with such a knife in their possession after they took it off of one of the settlers in the West. But finding an original one is going to be very hard to get to, because, well, they're 150 to 180 years old, maybe even older. And when you do run across them, they're in not the greatest shape, and they go for close to $1,000 or more. These are not cheap knives. And an original would be something that is way out of the price range of most people, and that goes for either of these knives, the folding dirk or the folding Bowie. So being able to get one of these and for a copy of it for the collection is not really that bad of a deal. And if you can get one, I would highly advise grabbing one if you can get it for a decent price. I paid like about $30 for this, and I'm very happy with the price. I think the build quality is definitely worth the $30, worth even more than the $30 if this is something that you would be interested in. But also, I know it's not for everybody. And also, the thing to remember with it, though, is, as far as I know, Schrade has no intention of making it again, and I don't know if anyone else is going to be making any either. So they're going to be kind of scarce in the future as well. So that's something else to consider if you're just looking to buy really cool-looking knives from yesteryear. As for practical, just how practical would this be as an everyday carry knife today? Well, probably about as practical as one of its contemporaries would have been, and that would be the D-Guard Bowie. You can see this is not something you would be carrying today as a fixed blade knife for most part. So why would this be your folder today? It's just not practical. It's just too heavy, too bulky for the pocket and everything else. There's much better choices out there, even among the large knives that people do carry today as an EDC. But that said, both this knife and this knife still has a place that it could be used today, just like the D-Guard Bowie. Both of these knives were very popular in the Civil War. They would have been pocket carries on both sides of the war. Both the Union and Confederate soldiers would have had these kind of knives in their pockets. So if you're trying to do some reenacting and you're looking for like a pocket knife for your typical soldier, maybe one of the ones who are a little bit better off, like an officer or something, the folding Bowie or the folding dirk would be great options for everyday carry. Also, because, when the war ended, the soldiers went off west, these knives were also carried with them out west, and they would still stick around, even though by then they were kind of out of date and old-fashioned. So if you're playing a veteran Confederate soldier or a veteran Union soldier who's now out west, maybe doing anything from mining, from silver to dealing faro, maybe this is the kind of knife that you would want to have in your vest pocket, either one of these knives. So that's where these knives would still come in handy today, is if you are some kind of Old West reenactor or a Civil War reenactor, then these are the kind of knives that would appeal to you, plus anyone who's just interested in the history of that time period. And with that said, let's move on to the slideshow. Thank you for visiting Knife Chats. I hope you enjoyed your time here. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel and ringing that notification bell so that you will be notified when the next episode of Knife Chats is up online. Thanks again. See you soon.